Hi everyone, today I'm going to be talking about how to create a 3D model rendering container in Boris Graffiti. I'm just going to go over some of the regular containers in Boris first, then we'll get to the 3D model container. I've got two pieces of text already in the timeline. Both are set as 3D extruded. There are two container buttons in the timeline. One is a title container, the other a 3D container, but not a 3D model rendering container. You won't be able to intersect separate lines of text or objects in that container. Okay, first we'll look at the title container. Select both pieces of text in the timeline using the Shift key on your computer. First, I do want to show you I do have some animation already on them. A little Y spin, both spinning in opposite directions. Next, if we select title container from the timeline, it brings in a title container, and both tracks are nested inside it since we had selected them both already. If we hadn't done that, we could have dragged them one by one into the container. If we toggle up the container, you can see they're both nested inside. Title containers allow you to do some basic title effects. If we select roll, it's going to give us a credit roll. As you can see, the text just disappeared. It's going to add some animation automatically. If we scrub through, you can see that the text is rolling up the screen and it still has our Y spin on it. Okay, let's go back, and you can play around with some of the other ones like crawl. Should crawl from side to side, and it does. Okay, I'm going to back out of that title container selection. I'm just going to hit Control plus Z on my computer to undo some of my selections to get back to just the two pieces of text. Next, I'll add the regular 3D container. You can either add them from this button here, or you can go up to the Track tab and choose New 3D Container. Either way will work. Okay, this time I did not select them both, so I'm going to select them both now and drag them into the container. Okay, now they're nested inside that container. So now if you select the container, it's going to bring up some of the basic controls you'd see in the individual tracks anyway, such as the position controls. Let's select the container. So now let's say you wanted to tumble the whole effect, not just the individual pieces of text, but the entire frame. Let's just choose the first keyframe in the container line, set our tumble control to linear, enter 2. Now if we scroll along, there's still Y spinning, but the whole container is tumbling as well. So you can do a lot of things with that. Again, what you can't do is intersect these pieces of text. Now if you saw my other video, which was a Boris Graffiti demo video on 3D models, I made using this 3D model rendering container. I'll put the link in the description of this video. At the end of that video, there were two pieces of text intersected right at the G's. Let's try and do that now in this container. Okay, let's go back to the gold text track, select it, and try and drag it down into the blue text below it. And as you can see, it's not doing it. It's always going to be in front of that other piece of text because it's first in the list in the timeline. If we go to the blue one, move it up one, now it's the top track. If you saw that in the timeline, you can see it in front of the gold one, but still drag it down. It does not intersect with the other one. You can move it back further, drag it down. Doesn't matter how you do it. Still going to be in front of the other one. Okay, I'm going to go back and reset some of the position changes I just made. I'm just going to set the keyframes to none. I'm going to go back to the gold one, do the same thing, just setting their keyframe interpolations to none to reset them. If I wanted to reset all my positions for my text, I could just hit this little R, but I want to keep my Y spin. Okay, I'm going to select both pieces of text now and move them out of the container. I'm just going to move them above the container right now and then delete the container. Okay, while it may look like they're intersected in the preview window, they're not. Let's tumble one so you can see. As you can see, they're not intersected. One's still in front of the other. Okay, I've already created one of these containers and saved it. So I'm going to open that up now and insert both these pieces of text into it. I'm going to deselect everything right now, go up to File, Insert Settings. Okay, I'll just choose this one. I've named it Empty 3D Z-Space Container. You can name yours whatever you like. Okay, let's put both pieces of those text into the container. We'll select them both, Drag them into the container. Now you can see a difference in the preview window. One's not hiding the other anymore. Let me tilt the container and you can see what's going on. I'll tumble it around so you can see. And as you can see, they're intersecting right at the G's. If I scroll through here, you'll see that they go into each other. Now they intersect. Now you could animate this container just like the last one if you wanted to have them tumble around, but they'd be intersecting now. So now you can use the container controls to make global changes to everything. You could increase the scale on the whole thing. You could increase the scale on just one. Let's go back to the container track and I'll scrub through, and they're still going inside each other. Two individual tracks of text, not just two individual pieces of text that are on the same track line. Okay, I'm going to leave the container but clear out both pieces of text. Okay, I still have my container, still have my background. Okay, I am going to hit that little R now and reset the container. So now everything goes back to the default settings. Now, once I show you how to create your own container, you can put whatever you want in there and it will intersect. One thing I didn't show you before, if you look up in the controls window, is that this container has an extra tab, and that's the lights tab, which controls the lights for the entire container. If I were to go back into the timeline and open up one of the other containers, the 3D container, if you look up at its tabs, it only has the 6 tabs. It does not have the extra lights tab. That's one way to tell that you're in the 3D model rendering container. Next, I'm going to show you how to create the container itself. And I'm also going to make a clock as an example for this tutorial. I've already made a clock. You may have seen it in my original demo video. I'm going to make one from scratch here. And in making the clock and making the numbers for the clock, you're going to see how this container popped up actually. This method should be available in all the versions of Corel Video Studio Pro, whether you're using versions 4, 5, or 6. I'm using version 5. If you do want to do this in Boris Graffiti for Corel Video Studio, make sure you get the Ultimate Edition. The Ultimate Edition is the only package that comes with the Boris Graffiti plugin for Corel Video Studio Pro. Okay, I'm going to start with some new settings. Just go up to File, New Settings. I'm just going to change my background back to that gradient that we had before. Make it a revolve. Okay, we've got text here already. We're going to use that text. Double click on the text track to open up the text window, and we'll just start typing in some numbers. I'm going to put a space between each one. I'm just going to make them a little bit smaller. Okay, we'll hit the update button. All right, we've got our clock numbers. Now we'll close our text window out. They're just 2D numbers right now. I haven't changed them to an extrusion, which I'm going to do, but I wanted to show you something in 2D first. If we go to track now, and you'll see something that says convert to container. Let's select that, and hey, look what it did. It separated the one line of text into individual tracks for each number. Now you could select all these tracks at once using the Shift key on your computer and make changes to them all at the same time globally. Or you could just choose one or two and just make changes to one or two. I'm going to put a little Y spin on all of these at once. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. It's not moving too quickly, but it is moving on every number. Okay, I'm going to reset my Y spin to none. Reset that. Like I said, you could just select one track and change its position without changing the others as well. I'll tumble one so you can see. Tumble the two. It's harder to see when they're just in 2D like this. Let's go back to none on that. Let's go back to the container, and of course you can always move them globally in the container as well. I wanted to show you in 2D first, because if you look up at the controls window, at the tabs in the control window, you can see there's only the 6 tabs. You don't get the lights tab in this container, so this is not a 3D model rendering container. But it does give you the ability to separate each piece of text. Okay, I'm going to Control Z all the way back to a single line of text before we hit the Convert to Container button. So now we're back to one single line of text. So now I'm going to change my track shape to 3D extrusion. We'll hit the Change Track Shape button, choose 3D extrusion. Now all our numbers are extruded. Now let's go to that Track tab again, choose Convert to Container. And if you look up at the Controls window, we now have that Extra Lights tab. We are in the 3D model rendering container right now. So now text, shapes, splines will all intersect. I'll show you what a spline is in a second if you don't already know. We're going to make the clock face out of a spline. Okay, now I've got my 3D model rendering container. In fact, I'm going to change the name now. We'll call it 3D model container. And that's going to be our master container. Okay, now I'm going to take a break for a moment. As I said, we are in the 3D model rendering container right now. So now I'm going to show you how to save it at this point. You could do this at the end, do a save as. I'm just going to show you how to do it here. That way you'll have your own empty 3D model rendering container, just like I had showed you earlier in the tutorial. Okay, so first let's empty it out. We'll empty out our numbers. We'll just select them all. You can hit the delete key on your computer. Okay, that just emptied out the container. Now you've got an empty container. We've already called it 3D model container. So we'll just go up to File. I'm going to do a Save Settings As, so we can come back to this and finish making our clock. And we'll save it as 3D model container. There's already one in there. Let's just call it 3D model container 2. Save it. So now you've got one saved. You don't have to go through the whole process of entering text or numbers and converting them to a container. You've got one. You can just go up to the file position, open settings, and then choose one of your 3D model containers. I've got a few in here. Another thing you could do to make this even easier is to save a copy to your library. Go up to File, Save Project Copy to Library, save the same name, 3D Model Container 2, hit Save. Okay, now if we open the library, it should be in there. Let's go to Window, Library Browser. Let's move this guy out of the way so we can see. And it should be this first one here. Let's click on that. Yep, 3D Model Container 2. It's in the library, which is the first thing that pops up when you enter Boris Graffiti from Corel. So you could just choose it from here and then go from there. Start adding things. Anytime you save new things to the library, it comes with a little circle with a slash through it. If you go over to Generate Thumbnails, it'll generate the effect that you saved. In this case, I had left the background. I could have winked the background out, and it would just save with a black background. Okay, let's close this. All right, let's go back to making the clock. You could stop here and just start adding things on your own, but if this is your first time doing this, you may want to watch the clock tutorial on how some of these shapes interact with each other. Now to get back to where we were, just go to Edit, Undo, Delete Track, and so now we've got our numbers back. So now we can continue on with the clock tutorial. Now I'm going to change the color of my numbers now, maybe make some extrusion changes now. Now if I just select one, I'm going to have to do these one at a time. Okay, that'll take forever. I don't want to do that on each one. So again, you can Shift Select, select them all. You can see they're all selected now up there. You can do some pretty cool animations with this too, as well. I'm going to go into extrusion. Actually, I think they're about where I want them. Could bring the bevel down a little bit. Let's go into materials. For this purpose, I'm just going to use one face. You could add colors or different types of materials to the front, the extrusion, the bevel, and the back. I'm just going to do it to all of them. So just hit 1. Changes the face count to 1. And any color or material will be applied to all. I'm just going to choose the iron in this case. Nice dark material for my numbers. Okay, now let's deselect all the numbers. Okay, now all our numbers are in this 3D model container, but they're all in there loose. So I'm going to add another container. And you can do that. You can have containers within containers. I'm just going to go down to the bottom. Just go down to my background. Let's hit add container. Okay, I've got a container down there. Let's see if it's nested inside my 3D model container. It is not. Let's put it in there. Okay, it's in there, but the numbers aren't nested in yet. Let's shift select. Alright, they're in there. Everything's inside that 3D model container, including this other one. Let's rename it numbers. Let me close that up for now. Alright, let's select the container. Now we're going to make the clock face. Let's go over to this tab here, add spline primitive. Okay. Now, nothing happened, or nothing seemed to happen, yet it did add a rectangle. That's the default setting on the splines. We're going to use a circle. It's actually called a wedge. As you can see, it's grayed out right now. It's not showing up automatically. I didn't gray it out. It came in that way. And if we go over here to change track shape, it comes in as line art by default, but this particular container doesn't use line art. So you either have to use a 3D extrusion, which we'll be using, or you can even use a 3D plane. So select extrusion. There's the rectangle, and it is extruded. You can spin it and see it is. And as you can see, the text is intersecting with it. Whenever you add anything to your container, it's going to appear in the same Z-space as everything else. So you're going to find you're going to have to start pulling things out. If one thing's bigger than the other, you may not see the smaller object because it's inside the other one. Okay, but I wanted a circle, so let's go down to the silhouette tab under rectangle. And the next one down looks like a little pie wedge. Just choose that, and there it is. So let's rename this now. I'm going to call this clock face. I'm going to change the color on it. I'm just going to use a white. So if we go up with the clock face selected, go back up to the materials tab. You can use any one you want. Right now it's set to plastic, and that's fine for now. You can get fancy later on. Oh, I've only changed the front. Let's again, I'm going to use white for the whole thing. We're really only going to see the front anyway once this is done. Just going to toggle that down just to try and keep tracks as simple as possible for now. Let's go back to the position on the clock face, and let's reset that spin to none. Okay, now I'm going to pull the numbers forward. Now you can see why I wanted that container. Rather than shift selecting them all or dragging them individually, we are going to have to do some individual manipulation with the numbers, and that's probably the longest part of this. But we can just choose the container that the numbers are in. And if we move the Z space slider, see they come forward, they've come out of the circle. Now to get this where we want it, you may have to tumble the container. Select container, let's tumble it, they're way off now. Go back to the numbers, let's try and bring them back in. These controls can be a little touchy. We can select the arrow tools here. Let's go back. Somehow I got on the paintbrush. And I've noticed if you're not on that arrow tab, things move pretty slowly. Alright, let's use the, I'm going to use the blue Z-Space controller here. Just get them about where we want it. Okay, that should do. Set that tumble to none. Now we're going to have to individually place these numbers up on there. It looks like they're a little big right now too, so let's check our font size. We can always just scale them down too. So while I'm on the numbers container, I could actually scale them down a little bit. And that could change their extrusion position. Let's take another look. It still looks pretty good. I think I'm going to extrude my face out a little bit more while I'm here. That way we can use this as the front and back of our clock instead of creating two separate pieces. You can even use it as the whole body if you want. I made a separate body and I'll show you how. Alright, let's go back to the numbers container. Let's bring them out a little bit. That'll work. Okay, good enough. Go back to the container. Let's just reset that. Now we're going to have to move our numbers manually. I'm going to start with a 12, which is actually at the bottom, and it's really two separate numbers, the 1 and the 2. But we can move them together if we just select both of those tracks at once. They're going to move together now. If I move it over, just using these the arrows. And let's move it up. This part's going to take the longest. But I'll do a few and then fast forward through the rest. We can do the 6 next. Okay, now you've got all your numbers placed where you want them.